Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we're back with another build video. Now, this one is going to be a little bit different than my usual build videos, in which I usually try and wait until I have something that's pretty original and unique to share with you guys, but no, today's build is straight up the same one that's been dominating the meta for a good 9 months now, pretty much since TU10. So you're probably wondering, well then why are you making this? And the answer is, because things are unlikely to change as far as the meta and balancing is concerned for either PvP or PvE until late this year or early next year when we get TU13 or whatever the next major update will be titled. Now, the devs did state that we'd get smaller quality of life title updates in between now and then, but honestly, since they had 2 title updates prior to now to nerf this stuff, and they didn't, I don't see it being as so egregiously OP that they're going to do something about it now, at least not until new stuff is introduced, and they may try and do some more holistic rebalancing. But circling back, given that I don't see this stuff changing anytime soon, I wanted to create this video as more of a reference than anything else. Like I said, you've probably seen your other favorite content creators make this build, 100 times over. But a lot of the time, I'll get viewers who comment and ask me what I'm running in various videos if there's PvP footage rolling in the background, and I love being able to simply shoot them a link to what I'm using if I've already made a video on it, because I've gotten feedback that my format is very instructive and easy to follow along with. So, given how things are unlikely to change and that this build will likely be my go-to for the next 8 or so months, I wanted to make this, again, as a reference that I can refer people back to. It's not an original build, hell, it may not even be a build for your preferred playstyle, but it is pretty much the definitive meta of PvP as of TU12.1, at least in the top 3. And if you're someone who's trying to get more into PvP or sharpen up your skills, this is the lowest skill requirement meta option in my opinion. It'll allow you the most wiggle room for mistakes because of its high survivability, while still allowing you to practice gunplay with a lot of burst damage, and a healthy dose of movement mixed in. But before we get into it, I will just note that no, there is no gameplay in this video. Again, if you watch a lot of Division content, you've probably seen people use this a million times. It's just Adrenaline, Intimidate, Armor Regen, and Lady Death. Also, I was pretty busy this weekend and didn't have a chance to sit down and capture some good gameplay for you guys, so apologies there. The good news, though, is that part of the reason why I waited until now to do this is that with the optimization station introduced back in TU12, I've been able to pretty significantly optimize this setup. It's not perfect, there's still some roles I need to go out and get boosted up, but it should provide you guys with a pretty good template to go off of if you end up wanting to try this out. So alright guys, without any further ado, let's hop into the build. And here's the build, folks, so let's just get started with the guns like usual. First off, Lady Death, pretty obvious. This is still the best run-and-gun SMG in the game, as long as you're not going for something with Wicked, then Ridgeways. Then you would want probably Sadist on your gun. But for this type of build, Armor Regen, just up in their face, constant movement, the Lady Death is the best go-to. If you don't have it, you can get it from any targeted SMG loot source. Just farm that for a bit, and hopefully you will get a drop. I will show you the stats page for all the gear, and we will go over what we have on there. I'm getting 51.9 crit chance and 120 crit damage. Pretty solid when you consider that I have Armor Regen on every piece, and that's what I'm going for mostly with the brands. I'd say it's a pretty good target to have acquired. For your secondary, you can really go with whatever you want. I like to have a shotgun just in case I need that secondary option for a bit of burst damage. And the M870 is a great burst damage option. There's a lot of shotguns that are good. You could use the A12, you could use this, you could use the, what's it called, the 612. So there's a lot of options. You could even use an AR if you want instead of a shotgun. I don't even use my secondary that often, so really use whatever you want there. For my sidearm, like most of my builds, I just have the Orbit. It's a really good option there. Moving on to the gear. Before I go over what we all have on here, because like I said, this is very heavily Armor Regen focused, I want to show you first what the total Armor Regen we're acquiring is, and that is 72,053. Now, as you'll see on the gear, I think if everything was fully maxed out, I could push this to 75,000, and that's a very good amount to be at. You're going to be, like I said, just regenning so much every second. It's just pretty crazy. So yeah, that's the target you want to try and get to if you're copying this setup. I just want to show you that before we dove into it. So first piece, we have 1 of 2 total pieces of Golan, which is giving me status effects, and then the target here, 1% Armor Regen. You want to get 3%. That's the most you can get on any possible combination of gear in the game. Currently is 3%. And so that's what we're getting here. And we're getting it with the minimum amount of armor pieces required, which is 4, which you'll see that. And that leaves us for 2 damage-oriented brand pieces. Just wanted to give you that breakdown. But that's kind of what we're going for here. So on the piece itself, we have armor, Armor Regen, crit chance, and a crit damage mod. Moving on to the chest piece, second piece of Golan, and this is the Hunter Killer named chest piece. Now, if you don't know, you get this from doing all 8 of the Hunter challenges in New York City, and that way you get or they're not just in New York, but it came with Warlords, and the chest is in New York at Haven. You have to get 8, I don't know if it's ivory or off-white keys, but whichever one it is, you get those, open the chest, and you get this out of it, and then Cassie sells it every single week or every time she shows up at her location, and this is how I got a really good roll of it here. But if you can't get that, if you don't have the time to do all the hunters, that's okay. If you just get a regular Golan chest piece or slot Golan in a different slot here, all you're going to miss out on is 5% loss from the Intimidate bonus, because it gives you 35% normally, and this gives you 40, so don't sweat it too much if you can't get that. But if you can, it's obviously best in slot since we're using Golan anyway. So on this one, we have 154,000 armor. Again, if I got this in the armor regen roll buffed up a bit, as well as the other stuff, I could push that armor regen towards 75k. We have those, a crit damage and a crit damage mod, again with the perfect Intimidate talent. Moving on to the holster, we have one piece of Bellstone Armory, which came in TU11, and that one piece of that gives us 1% armor regen, which again, I said we're going for 3% off of the gear pieces, so we're now at 2% with the 2 Golan and 1 of this. On this piece, we have armor regen, and crit damage. Moving on to the backpack. Actually, you know what? Even though I usually go backpack, we're going to go to the knee pads first, because that'll give us our 3% of armor regen, which is from the Emperor's Guard named Murakami knee pads. Now, the way you get these is they're a DZ exclusive, which means you're either going to have to go and farm them in the DZ, or you're going to have to wait for one of the DZ vendors to sell them, which also takes DZ currency. So you cannot farm these in the open world, targeted knee pads or Murakami. You can only get them in the DZ, but if there is ever a day where the DZ has targeted Murakami or knee pads, you should be able to scoop these up pretty easily. They come with the armor regen roll, and then you're going to want to try and get armor regen to come as the secondary stat, as you can see there, because they will always come with a skill tier, because it is Murakami. So yeah, that's what you're going to have to try and do there. This is probably, behind the Hunter Killer, the hardest one to get on this build setup. But if you can, you're going to want to, because if I didn't have this, my next easiest source of a 1% armor regen roll, what would it be? 3 pieces of Gila, or 3 pieces of Foundry Bulwark. So this is certainly what you're going to want to have, because like I said, now we have 3% from these 4 pieces, and now we have these 2 left for damage. So try and get this if you can, because it's going to slot in really well. And on this, like I said, I just have armor and armor regen. Moving on now to the damage-oriented pieces, we have one piece of Walker and Harris for the 5% weapon damage, and this is the named Walker backpack called the Matador, which gives you, of course, perfect Adrenaline Rush. So we have perfect Adrenaline Rush and perfect Intimidate, which, of course, those two work together very well, because Adrenaline Rush gives you a stack of 12% bonus armor per enemy around you up to 3, so you get total 36% bonus armor. Every 5 seconds, it just restacks itself. There's no downtime on it as long as you don't get shot. And then Intimidate, of course I didn't talk about it, but it gives you 40% weapon damage to enemies within 10 meters whenever you have bonus armor. So those two, plus the Lady Death, plus the armor regen, you can already see where the synergy is there. On this piece specifically, this is the one that I need the most optimization put into it, but we have weapon damage, armor regen, crit damage, and a crit damage mod. And lastly, for my gloves, I have one piece of Sokolov for the 10% SMG damage, and on here we have weapon damage, crit chance, and a armor regen roll. The one thing I should have noted is that my total setup for this build is 4 armor rolls and 2 red rolls, giving me 1.4 million armor, or if we want to get the exact number, 1.4, so almost 1.45 million armor. So it's really up to you how many blues and reds you want to have. I really like this balance of 4 and 2, but if you want to go 5 and 1, 6 and 0, 3 and 3, it's really up to you. It's all about finding that perfect balance that works for you, but this gives me the right amount of damage. Any more blues on this, and I would probably be unhappy with my damage amount, so this really works out for me, but try it out for yourself and see what you like. You can change any of that stuff without losing any of the other stats, like, you know, your crit amounts or your armor regen or any of that. Although, I mean, if you put more armor in, you would get more armor regen because it scales off of how much armor you have. So that would be affected if you change it. But again, for 4 blue rolls, you can get up to about 75k armor regen total. Moving on to my skills, we first have the Striker Ballistic Shield, which comes from exclusively the Firewall specialization, which we will talk about in a second. Now, if you're going to run a shield, this is the one you're going to want to run, because for every enemy within or in front of you, you're going to get 11% bonus damage. And you can see in a cone right there, Anyone that's in that orange field of view there is going to have, or it's going to be taking 11% increased damage from you. So it's obviously a lot better than the regular half shield because it gives you that extra damage bit. So if you're running Firewall, then certainly run that. And if you don't want to run a shield, we'll come back to my recommendations for that in a second when we talk about the specialization. But for my other skill, we have the EMP Sticky Bomb. Now, if you haven't run this or if you haven't tried it out, I recommend giving it a go, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's better than the Jammer Pulse, in my opinion. Certainly the Jammer has better capabilities to just quickly disable any skills around you. That's not actually why I'm running this. The reason why I'm running this, if you didn't know, is because this is an excellent tool to be able to stagger someone up close when you're fighting them, which is where you're going to be fighting people with this build. So basically, a lot of people you'll see if they use a Sticky Bomb, they aim it like this, they try and lock into their target, yada yada. That's not the way you want to do it, at least for this setup and this purpose of using it. What you want to do is say there's someone coming around this corner that I'm going to fight, and I'm just here, I'm waiting for them to come around. They come around right here. What I can do to get a lot of free shots in and to probably take them down if I have my damage stacks built up is to just tap it. And right around where you think your crosshair is, you can see that's right around where it's shot. It's going to shoot out that sticky, and then if someone's here, and I think it'll work on me, you detonate it, and it staggers you. So if that was an enemy, it would have done the exact same thing to them, and now they're staggered for a good half a second, 3/4 of a second, and that gives me a lot of opportunity to get a lot of shots in and probably take them down, unless they're super tanky or whatever. So it's a really good tool to have when you're up close and fighting someone. Again, if you haven't used the Sticky Bomb targeting in that way, I recommend giving it a try because it can be super beneficial. Again, all you have to do is just gauge where your crosshair is about, like right there, and then you just tap and it shoots, detonate, and you get an easy stagger, easy damage. It's really a great setup to use. All right, last up, let's talk about the specialization. So what I like to run, my recommendation is the Firewall because of the very obvious reasons. Obviously, they nerfed it back in TU11 or 12. Whenever they took away that when your armor breaks, you light people on fire, that no longer is a factor. But the two really big factors here are the shield. If you like to use a shield, then it gives you that, and that's great. It also gives you the really great med kit, which heals you for 200% of your armor over 10 seconds. So it's great for this setup where you're already getting a lot of armor regen. It means that when your med kit is up, you're basically not dying, and you can run around and do a lot of stuff in that 10 seconds that you normally wouldn't be able to do. It also gives you the cluster grenade, which is great for PvP, but if you don't want to run this, if you don't want to have the shield, then you could also run Gunner and use something like the Banshee Pulse, or you could just run a different skill altogether, like the decoy. So there is some flexibility there and some choice on your end, but my recommendation is the Firewall for those reasons I listed. It's just a really great PvP specialization. And that's going to do it for today's build video, guys. I really hope you all enjoyed. Again, I'm well aware that this is not a new or original build, but seeing as we're still only at the beginning of a long content drought for the game where not much is going to change, I saw this as being something valuable that I simply wanted to have on the channel so that I can reference future viewers back to it and things like that. So thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so that you can be updated every time I upload. Leave any and all of your questions or thoughts on the build or its implications in PvP playstyles down below. I'd be more than happy to respond to anything you put down there. That's going to do it for me, guys. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.